there is a device called sonar, sound navigation and ranging it is called as. Okay, they send the sound waves to find out the depth of the sea floor, basically. Okay, for this, like, using submarines and all of that. So after they did these things, they understood that your sea floor is not plain. It is more diverse than that of your earth. That's what they felt. They felt that there are major reliefs, minor reliefs, and they have divided the entire seafloor into continental shelf, continental slope, continental rise, and then deep sea plains. Okay, so basically four. After this, you will see major reliefs like oceanic trenches, mid-oceanic ridges, and then you will have your other minor things like, submarine canyons, etc., and all of that. The submarine canyons is very important. Recently, this is into news a lot. Why? Because submarine canyons are eroding or erosion that are taking place by the ocean water. Okay. Now there are no rivers, but still submarine canyons are present. Why these canyons are present? We'll discuss these things. Okay. I'll discuss when I'm coming to submarine canyons. What is it exactly and all of that. So like this, you have major and minor reliefs. Like we have seamounts, gjords, etc. Right. And then after we do this, this is the first part where we are going to discuss about the entire relief features of the ocean or the sea floor. And then after that, what we're going to discuss is we're going to discuss about the temperature and the salinity of the water, how the temperature of the water is increasing or decreasing, how the salinity of the water is increasing or decreasing when you go in deep waters. Okay. After we do this, we'll discuss about ocean currents, and ocean currents is the last topic of oceanography. Okay. There are tides and waves also. Tides and waves, very less importance. Again, you can skip them for now. Later on in the revision, just go through them once. The same thing happens, see, in the climatology, you can do the same for layers of atmosphere. In oceanography, in geomorphology, you can do that for rocks. In oceanography, you can do that for tides, basically. Just know what are the different types of tides, how they are formed, when they are formed. That's all. Okay, nothing much rocket science and tides as well. Okay, springs, tides, and then ocean currents. So we'll do ocean currents in today's class. If I have some time, I'll do corals. Otherwise, we'll do corals in tomorrow's class. Okay. So today we're going to discuss with oceanography. So I'll tell you what is oceanography, how are you supposed to what exactly we are going to study. See, so far I've given you the introduction of oceanography, like how we are going to go about it. First, we're going to study about the entire deep sea plains or entire ocean, the continental shelf, continental slope, continental rise, and the deep sea plain. What exactly are all these things? What are present in these things, etc., and all of that, and their importance. So you can see that our Earth is mostly covered with water, right? So that is basically nothing but the ocean that we have, and the over there is your Pacific Ocean, and the S-shaped ocean that you have is your M-shaped ocean. That is your Indian Ocean. So these are the important oceans that we have to understand, right? Now, hydrological cycle or water cycle, I think all of you are very clear. Due to sun's heat, the water vapor or the upper layer of the water on the oceans get evaporated. It goes to the atmosphere. There it gets condensed. And after the condensation, what happens here is it basically comes down in the form of precipitation. So this all we have studied. Right, this is your hydrological cycle. Then coming to ocean relief, I have told you that ocean is more diverse than that of your landform. Actually, people had thought that only on the land you have so much landforms, and then on in the ocean maybe everything is plain. But later on, when they started doing research, they realized that the ocean is more having more relief features than that of your land, is what they have discovered. Right now, ocean relief, you can see here. What are the different reasons why we have ocean relief? See, mid-oceanic ridges are formed because of divergent plate boundary or seafloor spreading theory. Similarly, oceanic trenches are formed because of plate tectonics theory, right? And then depositional process, there is deposition of lot of rivers into oceans. That is, ocean rivers just enter into oceans. They form alluvial fans, they form deltas, they form estuaries, they form like submarine canyons, etc. So they bring in a lot of deposition, like your salt material, your sand, your silt, etc. Right? So this is how your ocean relief is formed. So majorly, if I have to divide my ocean relief, you can see here it is divided into continental shelf, continental slope. This continental rise, I've not written it over here, but there's continental rise as well. And then you have deep sea plains. I'll just write this continental rise so that you don't get confused. Here in between, you have continental rise as well, right? Then you have deep seas are nothing but, or ocean deeps are nothing but the trenches. And I think all of you know how trenches are formed so far in the plate tectonics theory, right? Besides these divisions, there are also minor and major relief features like ridges, hills, seamounts, gyots, trenches, canyons, etc. We'll see each one of them. What is the meaning of seamount? What happens if the seamount grows further? It becomes an island. Okay. And if the seamount is having a flat top, okay, then it is called as gyots. So we'll discuss about these things a little later, but first we'll see what is continental shelf, continental slope, deep sea plain. Now here, what is important for your prelims point of view is, like, they may ask you which of the following statements regarding the continental shelf is are correct, or continental slope is are correct. So you need to know just a little bit about basics about these things, what it consists of, what it is made up of, and how much percent of gradient is there, or how much slope is there, etc., and all of that. These are some of the facts that can be asked in UPSC. That's why you need to just know this basics, right? So the first one, look, if I have to discuss about this, see here, this use different colors so that you don't. Okay, here it is like it is a connecting link between your ocean and your and your land. So this part, especially till here, you can see this part here. I am drawing the boundary. So entire this part is what? My ocean continental shelf. Why continental shelf? If you go and stand on the beach also, you can experience the continental shelf with your legs, with your feet, basically. So that place where you're standing and experiencing the beach is nothing but what your continental shelf region. Now you can see this part. I said I'll use different colors, right? Just 1 second. Okay, yeah, this part here where there's a steep slope that is separating your continental shelf from your continental rise. This part is basically continental slope where the gradient increases drastically. Okay, so here you can see gradient is very less. The slope is just 1 degree or something like that in the continental shelf, but in the continental slope, the gradient or the slope goes on decreasing 2 to 3 kilometers. See, where you have 1 degree and where you have 2 to 3 kilometers of shelf region or slope region, that much is the gradient. Now here you have last, that is continental rise. You can see this diagram over here. This is continental rise. So these are the 3 things. And here whatever plain region that is left out over here, this plain region is called as abyssal plain, or it is called as deep sea plains. Okay, there are different names they are given. You can call them anyways. You can call them as continental or sea floor, or you can call them as abyssal plain or sea plains, or whatever you want to call them. Okay, so these are the 3 things that you need to understand over here. Now apart from this, there are some other things also. You can see here small mountain ranges like structures here. These are all nothing but what they are all continental sea mounts, because they're in the shape of the mountain. Now, what is the difference between a mountain, an island, and a gyot? I'll tell you. So this is your mountain, and if it is emerging out of the sea, right? If it's emerging out of a water body, then it becomes an island, because all 4 sides covered with island. Now, here, if it is only like this inside the water itself, then this becomes a second diagram, becomes the sea mount. And the third one becomes the sea gyot when the surface of the mountain is flat, like. So this is your sea gyot. Okay, the seamount, sea gyot, and the first one is your island. Now, apart from this, here you can see another important feature which is called as submarine canyons. I'll tell you how submarine canyons are formed. There are 2 ways where it can form. One where you have a big river joining the ocean. It has this property to erode the continental shelf and the slope region. And due to the erosion or due to the sediments that the ocean bring, the entire continental shelf and the slope gets eroded. That's the submarine canyon, causing the submarine canyons. Now, why it is called as canyon? Because the canyons are nothing but they are formed due to the erosion forms of your water. Okay. Similarly, submarine canyons are also formed due to the erosion of the water itself, but they are present in the submarine, so their name is submarine canyon. Okay. So this is a little bit about what you meant to say, the relief features that we have to discuss. So first we'll see what's continental shelf. See, continental shelf is extended margin. So we have margin. So whatever extended margin is there from the ocean, that is my continental shelf, and it is occupying relatively shallow sea and gulf regions. So very small, region it is present in. Now, the slowest part or the shallowest part and shows an average gradient even less than 1 degrees, or even less than that also it may show the gradient. That means the steepness is very, very, very less. Okay. Now the depth varies from 30 meters to 600 meters. That's all, wherein you can, experience this continental shelf with your legs. Now, average width is 80 kilometers in some extent on marginal coast and all of that. Not required, don't worry. Sources of fossil fuels. So this is a place where fossil fuels can be got easily, right? Because you have both land and sea water experiencing, or pressure is being applied on the inner parts. So that's why there's a possibility that you can get some fossils over here. Okay. Now the shelf typically ends at a very steep slope, and that is called as shelf break. So from where the continental shelf breaks and the continental slope starts, this region is called as continental slope region. Okay. Now we are going to study about the continental, and you can see the submarine canyons. Please understand the submarine canyons are present where you have a big river mouth joining your ocean. Because the rivers have this capacity to, like erode, and they have the materials also in them that they erode the submarine canyons or erode the continental shelf and the continental slope, forming the submarine canyons, right? Now, next is continental slope region. This is very important. You can see over here also, the continental shelf is very, very close to Earth. It's almost like a part of the continental crust itself. But after that, there is a break that you can see. That you can see that the entire landmass is getting subducted. I mean, the entire landmass is becoming very slope now. This is because here starts a continental slope. And there's a break. There's a break between the land and the slope now. Right? So before it was like this. Now it started becoming like this. So you can see this is your continental shelf region. And now you can see the gradient, this is slope. So this is the continental slope region. So you can see this is a point at which it is breaking. It is not being straight enough, and it is breaking itself into a, what do you mean to say, deep slope. And that is called as continental break as well. Okay. Now indicates the end of the continents. Yahan pe it says that, okay, continents are going to end, and here starts the ocean. And then connects the continental shelf and the ocean basins. The gradient is somewhere around 2 to 5 degrees. Means you can see the slope of 2 to 5 degrees over here. Okay. And here the depth is somewhere around 200 meters to 3000 meters or 3 kilometers. Canyons and trenches are formed or observed over here. So trenches, I think all of you know, when one oceanic, whenever there is oceanic plate converging or diverging, especially converging with ocean only or with continental plates, basically what happens here is trenches are formed. Now, why trenches are formed is one of the layer goes below the other one, and when one goes below the other one, automatically the one which is going below will cause a deep trench. It will cause a deep valley-like structure in the oceanic region, and that is called as deepest trenches. So we have many trenches like Mariana Trench, etc. in the world, right? And we have Diamantina Trench in the Indian Ocean, and all these things are examples of what you mean to say here, trenches. Apart from the trenches, we also have canyons. I told you what are the canyons, the submarine canyons, how they are formed as well, right? Now they may ask you such kind of questions that which of the following features are found in continental shelf, or which of the following features of features of continental slope, and they may give you all these points. You will have to make them understand. I mean, you'll have to understand the question and answer it accordingly, right? Then you have deep sea plains. So this is nothing but this plain. I have not explained the continental rise, nothing much in continental rise. So don't have to worry. Even if you can skip it, it's okay, not an issue. Okay. Now, deep sea plain is the flattest sea plain that is being present on the surface of the sea floor, first thing. And the second thing is deep depth varies from 3 kilometers to 6 kilometers. That means just below the ground level, or, in the ocean level. The fine graded sediments like clay, sand, slit, etc. come and sit here. Now, why they come here? Because rivers are going to bring a lot of sediments. Where are these sediments going to go? They're going to go and sit on the surface of the seafloor itself, right? Now, this is your ocean deeps or trenches. I think all of you know how trenches are formed. Whenever there's oceanic convergence and whenever there's oceanic continental convergence, that is when the trenches are basically formed, right? Now, this is how your trench looks like. You can see the deep valley over here, the V-shaped valley, this one. I told you, if you see this particular landmark, if it comes out of the water body, then it becomes a volcanic arc. So this is my continental slope, right? So this is your continental shelf, and this line is continental slope. Apart from this, this valley-like structure is your trenches that are being formed. So this is just one example. This you'll get a lot of examples. Okay, I've told you what is volcanic arc, what is your seamount, etc., and all of that. Right. Now we'll say about ocean temperature. Before we go to ocean temperature, I'll give you 2 minutes. Kindly go through all these topics. If you have any doubts, let me know. Okay. Okay. So I believe that the ocean relief part is clear to all of you, right? So now we'll discuss with ocean temperature. Can anybody tell me about what is ocean temperature? How does the ocean temperature vary on the surface of the ocean and below the oceans? Like when you go below the oceans, what happens to the ocean temperature? And when you're on the surface of the ocean, what happens to the ocean temperature? Can anybody try and answer? Anyways, we are going to discuss ocean temperature itself. But what is your understanding out of ocean temperature? Any one of you? What do you understand? What is your point of view?
The surface water is warm, and as we go below, it gets colder.
Okay, why? Anybody else can answer this? He has anyways told, Rahul has anyways told that the surface is warmer and when you go below, it is colder. But can anybody tell me why is this process like this?
The sunlight doesn't reach over there.
Yes. See, I'll tell you something. 200 meters in the ocean surface is called as photic zone. Photic zone because the sunlight can penetrate to certain level only. So this zone, photic zone, is a zone where a lot of microorganisms grow. Because they are having sunlight, that means photosynthesis is possible. Plants, small plants will be growing here in this region. Okay. This region is also very good for fishing as well, where the only surface water, like somewhere around 200 to 300 kilometers, meter, that's all, not kilometers, 200 meters in the above surface. Now later, when you go below, like 1,000 kilometers, 1,000 meters, that is 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer. When you go below, the ocean water becomes very, very cold, right? Why? Because the temperature, the sunlight does not reach the water surface. For example, if I have to be very clear, we'll discuss about this with the graph also. So if this is my ocean like this, okay, the first 200 meters is fine, this part, okay, where you have your water, and here there will be sun rays that can penetrate inside, and this region where sun rays can penetrate inside is called as what? Photic zone. Photons refer to sunlight, so photic zone it is called as photic zone because sunlight enters inside here, and here it is good for growth of the bacteria, growth of the living organisms, etc. Right? So you can see here, source is what? Solar energy. Now where are we going to get the temperature for the ocean water to increase or decrease? Is your ocean temperature. I mean, solar is the source, or sun is the source basically. The process of heating and cooling of ocean is slower than slower than land. That means, I think we have discussed about this when we were discussing even in your climatology also, that earth gets heated very fast, right? And it gets cooled also very fast. But the same thing does not happen with, what you mean to say, water. The reason being, in the land, the molecules are very closely packed. So the heat transfer becomes very easy for it. But the same thing does not happen in water. So water takes a lot of time to heat, and it takes a lot of time to cool as well. It's not like, 1 day process or something like that. So ocean temperature increases or decreases very slowly, right? And you can see the region here. You can see in this picture where the water is warm, where the water is temporary, or moderately warm, and where it is completely cold. You can see in the tropical region where red color lines are there, or red color part is colored. That is where the water is very, very warm. The reason is quite obvious, because that region is the tropic region where the sunlight is directly falling onto the equator, and due to which what's happening here is that region the water is very, very warm. That only you can see the green color part, which is temperate zone, where the temperature is there. I'm not saying no, or the water is getting heated, but it's not as warm as equatorial region. And if you go to the polar regions, at least it's completely blue. That means the water is completely cold, right? Because the sun rays hardly reach both the polar regions. And when the sun rays is not reaching the polar regions, obviously it will be cold only. So this is a little bit about what you mean to say ocean temperature. Now, what are the factors that affect the ocean temperature? Like how the ocean temperature is affected? The first one is obviously your latitudes, as we all know about the insolation of the sun. And this is my earth, and this is your sun rays. So more amount of sun rays is going to enter into the tropical regions. So this latitude where you have equatorial region, or 23 degrees north and 23 degrees south latitudes, this region is called tropical region. Why? Because the heat received is maximum here, right? So the first factor, see, everywhere the factor is latitude. So if it is rainfall, climate, whatever we are discussing, you can see the first factor is always latitude. In the latitude also, it is only because of the sun rays. Because the sun rays are denser, or intensity of the sun rays is very, very high in the equator. This is the major reason. And the other reason is that the sun rays are not straight near the polar regions. And that's why what happens here is the temperature is less near the polar regions. So the first factor always is latitudes itself, if you have seen so far. Then we have unequal distribution of land and water. So you can see that the northern part, the water is less, the land is more. So what happens here is more, like landmass means heating is more. That when that compared to southern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, the water bodies are more than that of your land masses. So we know that the distribution of the land and the water on the earth is not same.
So at some places we have more water, in some places we have very less water, right? So this is also one thing. That is, ocean in the northern hemisphere has more contact with the land compared to the southern hemisphere. So heat received is also more in the northern hemisphere, because see, I'll tell you one thing. It is not, the heat is not only transferred from the sun, it is also transferred from the landmass. More amount of landmass around, more hotter the water will be, or more is the temperature of the water, because the heat is also transferred from the land to water, because we know the land is getting heated, photic zone is there. So, and the northern hemisphere has more landmass, so the water will also get easily heated up in the northern hemisphere than that of your southern hemisphere. Okay. Now, prevailing winds. So we have different types of winds. The winds that are coming from the land, the winds that are going from the sea towards the land, the winds that are coming from the land towards the sea. All these winds also play a very important role, and they're called as prevailing winds. Okay. Similarly, onshore winds do the opposite. See, offshore winds result in upwelling of the cold water from the below. Means whenever the winds are coming from offshore, means, you know, like, understand the onshore and the offshore winds. I'll explain what is onshore, offshore winds. Just give me a minute. Now, offshore winds result in upwelling. Upwelling, I think we have done upwelling when we were doing the El Nino, La Nina conditions. If you remember, what is upwelling? The cold water from the deep ocean, right, come towards the surface of the earth. That is called as upwelling. And whenever offshore winds blow, that is when the upwelling basically happens, right? And during driving away this warm surface water, resulting in the longitudinal variation in the temperature, that is decrease in the temperature. Now, similarly, onshore winds will do the opposite. We'll see what are onshore, offshore winds. So you can see downwelling wind pushes the warm thin layer and causes the pool near a beach. And this is upwelling. Upwelling is where the cold water comes to the surface, right? This is a little bit about what you mean to say the winds. Onshore and offshore winds are similar to land and sea breeze. If you remember, we had discussed land and sea breeze. Now, the winds that are flowing from the land to water, offshore, and from the water to the land. We all know that, you know, during the daytime, low pressure is created on the land, right? The winds will blow from the ocean towards the land, right? This is because they are flowing from the ocean. That's why they are called offshore winds. And if this ulta happens, that is, if the winds are blowing from the land towards the sea or ocean, then it is onshore winds. So onshore and offshore winds. Not important, but just know what are onshore, offshore winds, because at oceanography, only ocean currents play a very important role. Apart from that, the first part, that whatever we have discussed, right? Now, ocean currents, very important for your oceanography topic. When oceanography topic comes into picture, ocean currents are important. We're going to study some important currents. I'll show you what are the different currents that we need to remember. They are going to be 5 gyres and 5 Sargasso seas, 5 circulations. Now, what are these gyres? What is Sargasso sea? What is circulation and all? We'll see. First, we'll see what is ocean current. See, what exactly happens here is there are 4 types of ocean currents. Okay, one is surface currents, another is called surface, and one more opposite to it, like, which is present on the surface, or if you see the movement of the ocean water, it is happening on the surface, another is happening below the ocean water. It is called deep waters. And there is one more which is warm, and another is cold current. So like this, there are 4 different classifications. So warm ocean currents raise the temperature in the cold regions, while the cold ocean currents decrease the temperature in the warm regions. For example, if there is a cold current which is coming from colder regions to warmer region, it will make the warmer region a little cold. Similarly, if there's a warm current from the equatorial region going to some other places, it will make that particular region warmer. So open sea and enclosed sea, you must be understanding this. The lower latitude, enclosed sea have higher temperatures. So enclosed sea means, if you see the Indian Ocean is an example of enclosed sea, because it's not completely open. If you see a Pacific Ocean or your Atlantic Ocean, they are open sea. Why? Because they are not like open to Antarctica and Arctic Circle, both. But that only if you see Indian Ocean, it is enclosed in the northern hemisphere, right? At higher latitudes, open sea have high temperatures. Now, coming to vertical distribution of the temperature. See, vertical distribution is temperature and the depth are inversely related. That means as and when you go deep down the earth, as Rahul said, that on the surface, the temperature is high, and when you go deep down the earth, the temperature is very, very low. The reason why the temperature is low when you go deep down is the sun is not penetrating exactly, or sun is not penetrating inside the water properly. And due to the lack of sunlight in the deep down the ocean is the reason why we have temperature decrease. Now you see temperature decrease also is like, sudden decrease happens after some kilometers. See, up to some meters, it gradually decreases. But after some time, it suddenly decreases and becomes very, very low. And that is called as thermocline. Why it is called thermocline? Because cline means reduction. Thermo means heat reduction, basically. So you can see in this, like I told you, photic zone, the first 200 meters is called as photic zone, where there is sunlight. And then you can see a photic zone where there is no sunlight at all. And you can see here, the temperature will reduce completely in this region. You can see the color of the photic zone and the color of the aphotic zone. Color of the photic zone is light color because, light is entering inside and there is some amount of temperature rise here, or some amount of temperature, or like you can say ocean water is a little having some temperature. But that only if you see a photic zone is completely reduced. The sunlight is completely reduced and the temperature is completely reduced. So what they're saying here is when you go deep down the sea, the temperature is very, very less. And this is because of the sun rays itself again. And this is nothing but what, this is called thermocline as well. I'll show you in another map. So you can see photic zone 200 meters. Can you see this? Here it is written in white color. Photic zone 200 meters. And somewhere around 2,500 to 6,000 meters, you will have your deep sea plains. This is your thermocline. Look at this particular diagram very clearly. The first 500 meters, okay? You can see the temperature is reducing only from 24, 23, 22, that's all, right? But later on, from 500 or somewhere around 400 to 1,000, you can see that there's a drastic decrease. So the temperature from 20 degrees is coming to 4 degrees. So you can see this region over here. See, this region is a region where, temperature is decreasing. I'm not saying no, but it is decreasing very less. So this region to this region here, you can see the temperature is drastically decreasing, especially this region over here. This region where there's a drastic decrease in the temperature is called as what? Thermocline, right? And from here onwards, you can see again, there is less decrease. So this drastic decrease is called as what? Thermocline. Sometimes they may ask you this definition. So I'm just teaching this a little, in detail. Now, the region where there's a rapid decline of the temperature, that is called as thermocline. Boundary region can exert up to 100 to 400 meters below the sea level and can exert downwards. Don't worry about this, but just understand what is thermocline, where it can be present, etc. Especially from 400 meters onwards, what happens is this thermocline up to somewhere up to 1,000 meters. So up to 400 meters to 1,000 meters, the 600 meters, whatever range is there, that is where you will see your thermocline basically, right? That is completely temperature is going to reduce. Yeah. So far we have discussed ocean temperature. I'll give you a minute. Kindly recall what is ocean temperature. Ocean temperature only understand 3 important points. One is the first 200 meters, there is photic zone, so the temperature is high. Later on, a photic zone, temperature is not there. Temperature goes on reducing. Now, for the first 200 or 400 meters, the temperature reduction will be very, very less. That is from 24, 23, 22, that's all. But afterwards, what happens is from 400 meters to 1,000 meters, there's a drastic decrease in the temperature. And this drastic decrease in the temperature is because the sun rays are not entering into the water properly, right? And that causes the aphotic zone. And here, between the photic and the aphotic zones, there is a thermocline. That is nothing but the temperature is drastically decreasing from 20 degrees to somewhere around 4 to 5 degrees. This drastic change is nothing but what, it is called as thermocline. And when you go deep down the sea, what happens is your temperature is very, very, very less because the sun rays are not falling directly. Now, what are the factors that affect the temperature of the earth is temperature of the ocean is one is latitudes, the prevailing winds, etc. Right? So these are certain things. Similarly, ocean salinity also are the same. Ocean salinity is how much amount of salt is dissolved in the water. Basically, that's ocean salinity. Before we start with ocean salinity, just for a minute, If there is any doubt with ocean temperature, let me know. Yeah. So we'll see ocean salinity now. Ocean salinity is how much amount of salt are dissolved in oceans. Can anybody tell me about ocean salinity except for Rahul? Because Rahul will answer. Supriya, Naveen, can you tell me about ocean salinity? How the ocean salinity is different across the ocean? It's okay if you're wrong. I'm anyways there to correct you. At least give a try, no? Anybody? How ocean salinity is different? What happens if you go deep down the sea? What happens if you are present on the surface of the ocean? What happens to the ocean salinity? No, nobody has an idea.
Develop
Mhm.
formation of ice, glaciers, man. Glaciers causes regions.
Okay.
Eruption regions.
I'm asking about ocean salinity.
How salinity is increasing.
What happens or salinity is more where? In the surface or in the deep plains? That's my question. Okay. Anyways, I'll explain it to you. Don't have to worry about this like this. But please do revision properly, all of you. Ocean salinity. Now, if I have to discuss about the ocean temperature, you know how it is happening. The first 200 meters, the temperature is very high, or you can say the temperature is normal, 24, 23, 22 degrees Celsius because of the photic zone. When you go down, it is not entering into the water properly, so the temperature will reduce. Now, coming to ocean salinity, what happens in ocean salinity? First, we'll understand the meaning of salinity. Now, you have a glass of water. There are two glasses of water, glass A, glass B. Now, in glass B, you put salt in it. Then that water becomes a salty water or a saline water. That means the salt should be dissolved in the water. Okay. So, the total content of dissolved salt in the sea is called salinity. How much water is there in that particular, water body? That is basically called as salinity. Now, calculated as amount of salt in grams dissolved in seawater for 1000 grams. So here, no, we don't call liters basically. In chemistry, basically we use kilograms and grams to understand how much salt is dissolved in water and all of that. Now, again, not important. It is expressed as parts per thousand. Okay, it is called PPT, parts per thousand. Okay. Now, seawater is primarily made up of many ions with chlorines. So you will see that, seawater, you will have a lot of chlorine, a lot of sodium, and a lot of sulfate, basically. Other materials are also there, like magnesium, calcium will also be there. But basically, they'll be having these chlorine, sodium, and sulfate in your oceans. So now I want you to understand over here how this salt is entering into the water. Now there are two ways. One way is through rivers. You can see the river discharges. When the rivers are coming, you can see the carbonates, calcium, sulfate, sodium, all of them are coming here. Okay, all of them are coming and entering into the water. So when the sea water, river water is discharging, you can see over here. 1 second. In this region, river discharge. In the river discharge, what's happening here is the river water is entering into the sea. That's river discharge. First thing. Now, apart from this, you can see volcanism over here in this part. When volcanism happens also, so due to whatever materials which are present in the surface, like whatever are present in the deep down the earth, that will also come to the surface of the seafloor, and that is also one of the reasons why my salinity will increase, or salinity is getting created on the in the ocean basically, right? And mid-oceanic ridges where you will have your volcanism happening. So we have seen volcano, through that also sulfur. Now understand, it's not only this, it's also the atmosphere. In the atmosphere, we have a lot of ions, and these ions also increase the salinity of the water, because water vapor, and when it could be acid rain that is coming, like that's happening. If there are too much of sulfate oxides and nitrogen oxides which are present in the atmosphere, when they mix with water vapor, it comes down to earth in the form of acid rain. That will also increase the number of sulfates, nitrates present in the ocean water. So these are the reasons how we are getting water, or these are the reasons where we are getting salt in the water, right? This is first. We need to understand how salt is there. Now you can see how much percent of salt is there, how much amount is there. You can see in the this thing table, right? Now coming to next, not important, okay? Just know sodium chloride is maximum, and after sodium chloride, it is magnesium chloride. Now sodium chloride is maximum. You can understand this because of, you can connect it. Dandi March, so Gandhiji went, did the salt by himself because salt tax was imposed. We get salt from seawater. So something like this, you can relate to it, and you can see, understand that sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is nothing but the common salt which you use in making food and all of that. The same common salt it is. So this was easily made by Mr. Gandhiji, or our father of nation. So this is a little bit about sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is maximum in, or maximum dissolved in the water, right? So this is how it looks like. Now, how does the increase in the salinity happen? Or what are the reasons why salinity increases or decreases? We'll see. Surface water salinity depends on, means on the surface, whatever salinity is there, it depends on evaporation. Now, I'll tell you one thing. Okay, look at this experiment over here. Take a container. Take two containers like this. Now put water in both of them. Okay, add salt to both of them. Close this container with a plate and keep it open. What happens? This one will be evaporated. Okay, when it is evaporated, what happens? Most amount of the water is lost. If the water is lost, the salt will be more. You're adding same amount of salt to both the containers. Now, if you see the salinity of this one and the salinity of this one, the salinity of the second one is more and the salinity of this first one is less. Why? Because here the evaporation did not happen only. In the second case, what happened? Evaporation happened. So water got lost. I hope you're able to understand. So let us assume there are 100% water and 100% salt. Here also 100% water and 100% salt. Because of the evaporation, 50% of the water is gone into the atmosphere. So only 100% salt is there and 50% of water is there. That means salt content is more. So this water becomes what? More saline. So if evaporation is more, that means salinity will also be more on the surface. Okay. Precipitation, less means more salinity. So if the precipitation is more, means more fresh water is coming. See, simple, the same example you can take here also. Take two containers, add 100% of water or 50% of water to both of them, right? And then add 50% of salt to both of them. Now to the container 2, add another 50% of water. This water should be fresh water, and the fresh water comes from where? Rainfall. So if the rainfall is happening, what will happen? This will be less saline, no? And this will be more saline. Why? Because fresh water is added to it. So when fresh water is added to it, the salinity decreases. Quite obvious.
If you are taking a glass of water, putting a salt to it first, and add again water to it, the salinity automatically decreases from how it was before. So if there is rainfall, then the salinity will be decreasing. If more rainfall, less salinity. If less rainfall, more salinity. Okay. Fresh water from the river. Okay. More flow leads to less salinity. Now see, we know that the fresh water is coming from the rivers. I know water carries a lot of sediments, but it may not only carry the salt, it may carry other sediments also. If more amount of fresh water is coming and joining the ocean, then less salinity will be observed. Freezing of glaciers. So like Naveen was telling that glaciers will be there on the surface. Now glaciers are freshwater forms. When the glaciers melt, right, that is also a reason where the salinity is going to reduce. See, salinity will reduce when you add too much of fresh water. Salinity will increase when you remove too much of fresh water. Simple. If fresh water is removed, then salinity is more. If the fresh water is added, the salinity is less, right? So now see, salinity increase and decrease. I've told you how this basically happens, right? You can see the arrow marks here. Salinity is decreasing because of the rainfall. More rainfall, salinity decreases. If less rainfall is, the salinity increases. So this is a small cycle. So here you can see this diagram is basically talking about the evaporation and the precipitation. If evaporation is more, obviously salinity will be also more. If the evaporation is less, the salinity will be less. So see, evaporation is more means more amount of fresh water is lost. So the salinity will also automatically be what? More. Similarly, you can see here near this, I think all of you know what is doldrums. Doldrum is 0-degree equator. So depending on the sunlight, you can see near 30 degrees and 30 degrees, the evaporation is maximum. So there the salinity will also be what? Maximum. I hope you are able to relate to what it is. And coming to precipitation also. So here you can see the brown color line shows precipitation. Near the doldrums, more precipitation. More precipitation means salinity is very, very less. So this is a little bit about, how salinity and evaporation varies across different different what you meant to say latitudes, right? So far what we discussed was surface water. Now look here, you have to take a plain A4 size paper and do it in this way. Here do it to four parts basically. One for temperature and one for salinity. And some temperature also surface temperature and deep temperatures. Here also you have surface salinity and then deep salinity. Here in the surface, what happens? We know 200 meters, there is photic zone, and below that you have a photic zone. Here you need to understand that there is a thermocline. Similarly here, what happens? It depends on evaporation and depends on precipitation. Evaporation is more, salinity is more. Precipitation is more, salinity is less. They are inversely proportional. Rainfall and salinity are inversely proportional, but evaporation and salinity are directly proportional. Deep means what happens here is on the surface, the salinity is different. And when you go deep down the earth, the salinity is different. So that we will see in now's condition. Like we'll see how the horizontal distribution of the salinity happens. The salinity of a normal open sea ranges from 33 parts per thousand and 37 parts per thousand. In the landlocked regions, it depends again now. Every particular ocean or every particular water body will have different salt in it. Again, it depends whether all the sites it's covered by land or all the sites it's covered by water or whatever it is. Okay. In the landlocked regions like Red Sea, it is high, that is 41 parts per thousand. While in the estuaries and the Arctic Circle, the salinity fluctuates. Now see, it is covered all the sites by land only. Then automatically it will have more salinity in it. It could be due to pollution. It could be due to any number of reasons. Similarly, that only if you see the other places like Arctic Circle, estuaries and all, you see that there is fluctuation of salinity seasonally. This is due to the influx of the fresh water. Now, what happens is in the Arctic Circle or in the other parts of the world, the fresh water is coming properly. There is no any issue, right? Now, this is the ocean salinity. You can see here how it looks like. Now, you can see ocean salinity is different in different regions. Now, in the hot and dry regions where evaporation is very, very high, hot and dry regions. That means you can understand this. Hot and dry regions means where? Near the equatorial places. Near the equatorial places, the evaporation is high. Evaporation is high means the salinity will also be high. Common sense. Similarly, when you go to the poles, evaporation is less. because sun rays are not there only. So temperature, sorry, salinity will also be what, less. Maximum salinity 37 parts per thousand is observed between north to 20 degrees north to 30 degrees north because direct sun rays over here. The North Sea being in the higher latitudes record higher salinity due to more saline water being brought by the northern Atlantic drift due to the influence of ocean current. So what happens here, it also depends on the movement of the water. So if there is water that is moving and if it is carrying more salinity, then the salinity will also increase, right? Now, which of them is more saline? Can anybody tell me which of them is more saline, Arabian Sea or Bay of Bengal? Arabian Sea is more saline than Bay of Bengal. I'll tell you the basic reason. Most of the rivers drain to Bay of Bengal. 77% of the river go towards Bay of Bengal itself. If you know this. So more water is going to Bay of Bengal means salinity is less, right? So Arabian Sea, it is more. Now, vertical distribution. So far, what we discussed was horizontally how this is distributed. That means on the surface, based on the latitudes, etc. Now we'll discuss about deep inside the ocean, whether the salinity is more or no. Okay. Now see, salinity changes with depth, will not remain same at all the location. So there is halocline. You can see halocline. Similar to thermocline, there is a measured change in the stability or majorly change in the stability, distinct zone of salinity change. Now the surface salinity has been studied under horizontal distribution, it varies. Salinity at a deep is very much fixed. That means, when you go down, it is very much fixed. Here you can see here halocline. Halocline means what? There is a sudden decrease, but you can see that is different in tropics, different in higher latitudes, and different in equator. There is cline, there is decrease in the salinity when it is coming from one latitude to another latitude. That is a different, or from one depth to other depth. You can see it's different. It's different in equator, different in tropics, and different in higher latitudes. So in the equator, you see the thermocline is not much high. That only if you see, halocline is not much high. Similarly, in tropics, it's very high, depending on the temperatures. So what you have to understand here is, on the surface, the salinity depends on evaporation and precipitation. Below, anyways, the water is going to be fresh, and it will not have much amount of salts in it, right? Because salinity is also depending on your heat only. Evaporation and precipitation is based on what? Your heat. More heat, more evaporation, more salinity, right? Less heat, less evaporation, less salinity. Again, the surface salinity depends on what? Surface salinity basically depends on your sun rays itself, right? So this is a little bit about salinity. Now, higher salinity is much denser, stays below. Means, if more salt is there, it stays below. Okay, having lower salinity, lower density, higher the density, deeper it is. The property leads to ocean stratification. Not important, just ignore this. Just know which are the important highly salted water bodies. One is Lake Van in Turkey, Dead Sea, and Great Salt Lake. Yeah. So the next is difference in the water density affects the vertical mobility of the ocean currents. So see, again, density high, low, it little affects the movement, but not required. You can just ignore it. Now you can see the denser water tends to sink. Density of the water is more, then it goes down. If the density of the water is very high because of temperature, it comes above. You can see over here in this particular diagram. Now, so far what we have discussed here is, see, two topics I have completed. One is your ocean shelves, continental shelf, continental slope, continental rise, deep sea plains, right? Submarine canyons, sea mounts, gyots, oceanic trenches, mid-oceanic ridges. So these are the relief features that we have discussed on the ocean. After that, ocean temperature, ocean salinity. I told you how to make the box for ocean salinity and ocean temperature. Do that with A4 size paper. It becomes more easier for you. So after this part, what is important is your tides and waves. Now see, water is not only moving horizontally, it is also moving vertically, right? Up and down movement. So that is called tides and waves. Now waves, at least it's very quite common that, like whenever you go and stand on the beach, whatever waves that you see, whatever water that comes towards you that is because of wave nature. It is because of the winds also. The winds carry the water surface, and that's why the, like waves are getting basically generated. Waves not important. See, waves are defined as a undiluted smooth movement of the water, up and down movement. Okay, characterized by well-developed crust and troughs. This is, I think, very simple. You throw a stone like this, take a glass of water, throw a stone, you see that ripples are found, up and down movement of water happens. That is nothing but what your wave. So this is how your wave looks like. I think that's clear. Now, what is squash and backwash? See, when the water is coming towards you, let us assume that you are standing on Goa beach. When the water is coming towards you, it is called squash. Okay, because it's coming and squashing on your legs. When it is going back, right? When it is going back to ocean or sea, is called backwash. It's very quite simple. Backwash, going back, squash is coming towards you. Now comes to what you have is something called tides. See, what happens is, I'll tell you the reason for the tides. Due to sun and moon, both's gravitational force is there on Earth. I mean, both of them are exerting forces on Earth. Due to which what happens here is some water will start rising up above, vertically above, and then they fall. This is called as what? Tides, basically. You can see the vertical movement referred due to rise and fall of water in the ocean and sea due to the attraction of the sun and the moon. Okay, because of the attraction of the sun and the moon, the water rise above and falls below. So this rising and falling of water due to Earth and sun and moon's gravitational force is called as what? Tides. Okay, now these tides are not present in most of the other planets. Why? Because they don't have a wonder material called water in them. Okay, so it's only absorbed on Earth, basically. Now, because of the sun and moon's gravitational force, the Earth is able to have tides. Now, yes, so this is happening four times like in a month. 4 times in a month means 7 days gap. I'll tell you how it happens. There are two types of tides. One is called the spring tide, another is called the neap tide. Now, between two neap tides, 15 days gap, and between two spring tides, there is another 15 days gap. For example, let us assume on 1st of July, if it was a spring tide, on 7th of July, you will have a neap tide. Similarly, 14th of July, you will have another spring tide. And then 28th of July, you will have another neap tide. So a gap between a spring tide and a neap tide is approximately 7 days. Right? We'll discuss what is a spring tide and what is a neap tide. Majorly, why they are caused is because of greater pull of gravitational pull of moon as well as gravitational pull of Earth. Right? So this is how it looks like. You can see Earth and moon over here, and you can see the tides over here: low tide, high tide, low tide, high tide. So there are 4 times the tides are getting occurred. Now, centrifugal force not important, so just understand this here. So when the gravitational pull is very high, okay, it's called tidal bulge, and when centrifugal force is very high, and both of them are equally high, you can see a bulge kind of thing over here. Again, not important for the exam, not asked much. Now, based on the position, whether the moon, sun, and Earth are perpendicular to each other or parallel to each other. Okay. Now, based on this, we have a spring tide and you have a neap tide. You can see the first option here. The first option where moon is in both the positions, which is in alignment with sun, which is completely parallel to sun. You can see this, the first diagram. I'll just make it a little big, yeah. Right, so this is spring tide, the first one, when they're all in the same line, and they'll all come in the same line after every 15 days. Okay, so 1st of July it is in the same line, then we'll come back to the same line on 15th or 14th of July. Okay, now this position where both the positions of the moon are perpendicular to the sun. You can say 90 degrees here, right? You can make a 90 degrees. I know you're not able to understand what is this way. 1 second, let me just do it. Yeah, in the second diagram, you can see they are perpendicular, 90 degrees. The sun and the moon are in 90 degrees to each other when you compare it with Earth. Now, this is called as what? Neap tide. Now, I want you to understand, first spring tide happens, then neap tide happens, then again spring tide happens, then again neap tide happens. So between a spring tide and a neap tide, there's a 7 days gap. Between 2 consecutive spring tides and neap tides, there's a 14 days gap. I given you example of 1st July onwards. You can use it for any other date also, right? So this is a spring tide when all the 3 of them are in the same direction, right? Similarly, tides based on sun, earth, and moon's position also. This is spring tide.
So when the sun, moon, and the earth are in the straight line, the height of the tide will be higher. And they occur twice a month. Once due to full moon period and full moon period, and another is new moon period. Okay. Now, this is not important. Zigzag is not important. Neap tide is important. 7 days interval between the spring tide and the neap tide. I told you this. The sun and the moon are at right angles here when the neap tide is formed. So just understand the spring tide when it is formed. When sun, moon, and earth are in the straight line, spring tides are formed. And it is present, or you can see that in the full moon and the new moon time. Okay. And the neap tide is 7 days interval between the spring tide and the neap tide will make you spring tide and the neap tide, there's a 7 days interval. And when the sun, moon, and the earth are in right angles to each other, especially moon and the sun are in right angles, that is when your neap tide is formed. Okay. Now, characteristics of tides. Tides are bulged, not important. You can skip this. We'll come to ocean currents. What does ocean currents, how important ocean currents are? What are the important ocean currents? I'll finish what are ocean currents and then we'll wind up the class. Another, it's 8:50, another 30 minutes class. Okay. Because if I finish ocean currents, then the oceanography will come into picture. I mean, will come to an end. If you remember how to study about oceanography, just 15 minutes for each one of them. 15 minutes for the continental rise, continental shelf, and all the important major and minor relief. 15 minutes for ocean temperature and ocean salinity. 5 to 10 minutes for your tides, and lastly 5 to 10 minutes for your ocean currents. So like this, in 1 hour you can completely finish your oceanography. This is all that you have to study in oceanography. Nothing else will come. And oceanography questions are also very, very less, right? Now, lastly, we are going to study ocean currents. Now, what happens here is some amount of water, they don't like, current means what? Flow of water. We all know that rivers are flowing from one place to another place. But ocean water also does not sit quiet. Like how rivers flow from one place to another place, on the ocean also there is some amount of water which keeps flowing always. And they're nothing but what, your ocean currents. Now, they are like a river flow in ocean. I told you already. Large volume of water flow in a definite path. Means some water flow directly to this direction only. Some water flow from this direction to this direction only. They are not flowing randomly. They have a fixed place where they are flowing basically. Okay. Now, ocean currents are influenced of two types. One is primary forces that inhibit the motion. Secondary forces that inhibit the current flow. Not required, don't worry. Just understand ocean current means what? Flow of water on the surface of the ocean. Like how rivers flow, similarly, ocean water also flows, and that's ocean current. Now, the primary force that influence the current, one is heat, another is wind. Heat because it heats the land surface, makes the water dense and makes the other water cold, right? So look at this. Heating of solar, it is caused by water to expand. This results in about 8 centimeter higher level equator compared to the middle latitudes. The smaller gradient causes the water to flow. So even if one water is heated and the another part of the water is not heated, there will be flow of energy. Conduction or it's not conduction, it's convection process, right? Simple. And the winds will also make the water flow. The heat will make the water flow. The wind will also make the water flow. Coriolis force, very important. They are getting deflected towards a particular direction when they're moving from north to like equator region, or from equator to north region. The deflection matters based on the Coriolis force itself. They'll not flow in any direction that they want. Okay. Now, different coasts are there. It also depends on the shape of the coast. Depends on the shape of the coast means depending on the shape of the coast, your currents flow. Okay, you can see here how the currents are flowing. The red color lines are nothing but with the help of this red color lines, the currents are basically flowing. You can see over here, I'll make it a little big over here. You can see Gulf of Mexico, the current is different in direction. Cuba, the current direction is different. This is a Gulf Stream. Okay. And then afterwards, based on, again, the Gulf Stream is divided into 4 parts, basically. One goes to British Islands, and another goes to Europe, another goes to Iceland, another goes to, like upper parts of the Europe, basically, and all of that. Depending on the shape of the coast also, the currents are different. Okay. The currents are strong near the surface and may attain speed of around 5 knots. At the depth, the currents are generally slow and with the speed less than 0.5 knots. Not important, don't worry. You have to understand this
here, see, look at this red color line represents the cold water or cold current. Okay, if they are fast moving, then it is called as stream, and if they are slow moving, then it is called as drift. Okay, if I say North Atlantic drift, that means it's a slow moving current. If I say Gulf Stream, that means it's a fast moving current. If it is red in color, it's a warm current, and if it is blue in color, that means it is cold current. Okay, now look at this. See, this are important. They may ask you which of the following currents form a gyre in North Atlantic, South Atlantic. There are 5 currents, ocean current circulation. There are 5 gyres and there are 5 Sargasso seas. Okay, I'll explain each one of them properly. What is the meaning of Sargasso sea? What is the meaning of gyre? And what are the different 5 gyres and Sargasso seas that are formed? First one we'll see. Okay, before we start with this, a little blackboard from the blackboard, I'll just show you certain things. Now, always understand, if this is your equator, always, we know that the winds are flowing in this direction, right? Northeast and southeast direction, the winds are flowing from this direction. Now, these winds will always form a warm current. Why? Because they are present in the equatorial region. Now, equatorial region means water will be warm, so the warm currents will only flow. And usually the direction is what I've shown in the picture itself. So you can see that this is actually north equatorial current and this is south equatorial current. If it is present in the northern hemisphere, it is north equatorial current. If it is present in the southern hemisphere, south equatorial current. Now this will be present in all the 3 oceans. That is in Indian Ocean also. See, Indian Ocean north equatorial current does not exist because northern part or northern hemisphere is covered with land. We are not doing about northern. I told you there are 5, right? 2 in North Pacific, 2 in Atlantic, and 1 in Indian Ocean. Okay, let us assume it is like this. So there are 2 in this thing. Here in Indian Ocean, you have only 1. Why? Because here it is completely covered with what? Land. Okay, this region is completely covered with land. So that's why in Indian Ocean you have 1 gyre. In South Pacific you have, in Pacific Ocean you have 2, and then in Atlantic Ocean you have again 2. In all the 3, the middle ones are called as north equatorial current only. Exactly opposite to north equatorial current. To counter this, always. To counter this, you will get a counter equatorial current, always. Okay. So first we'll see the north, 1 second. Yeah. Yes. So first we'll see the first part. This is which ocean? If you can see this, this is S-shaped ocean. So it is Atlantic Ocean. So in the Atlantic Ocean, what are the 2 important ocean currents that are formed? We'll see. See here, let me make it big. Can you see this one over here? Wait. Yeah, I'm not able to get this thing anyways. You can see the first one over here. That is, I had told you that there will be a north equatorial current. North equatorial current which is flowing here towards your Caribbean current. Now here you see Caribbean islands. So it is named after the islands that are present over here. This north equatorial current, as it comes with the small islands over here, it is called as Caribbean current. After the Caribbean current, now you can see there is a Florida, Strait of Florida over here. So that's why the current that is called as Florida current. Now you have to remember all of them forming a gyre. Gyre is nothing but, you know, what happens here is due to this, there's this kind of circulation that is happening over here. And that circulation of water is called gyre. And in between, you can see a Sargasso Sea. Sargasso Sea is a sea which is four sides covered with water. You can see that all the 4 sides, it's covered with water itself, right? So that's called Sargasso Sea. And the formation of this entire circulation of the water is called gyre. Okay. Now see, north equatorial current is flowing towards the Caribbean islands and forming a Caribbean current. Or you can see a Caribbean current is formed. Later on, a Florida current is formed. After this, Florida current, you see a Gulf Stream. Now I told you what is a stream. Stream is a fast moving water. Fast moving water body is called as, or fast moving water current is called as stream. Now see, Gulf Stream is further divided into 3 parts. Okay, here it is called west wind drift. Drift means going slowly. Then you have North Atlantic. It is in the present in the northern part of the Atlantic, so it is North Atlantic drift. And then you have Canary current, which is a cold current. Now try and understand, the cold currents are the currents which always come from the polar regions towards the equatorial region or almost cold. And the one which go from the equatorial region to the polar regions are almost warm. You can see in this particular diagram also very clearly. Now, apart from that, we have a Labrador current, which is coming from here, and we have another current that is East Greenland current. Now, here in this, near the Gulf Stream, where you see the Labrador current and the Gulf Stream meet, right? You can see a cold current and a warm current meeting. This place where my cold current and warm current meet is called as, it's not called as something, but this is basically a fish reaching ground. But because cold current is coming means cold waters is coming. And cold water will help in, if you remember, the upwelling part also, the cold water comes on the surface, so it brings all the minerals. And when the minerals are brought here, the minerals will help in growth of the plants, planktons, etc. and all of that. That will make a food, or that will create a food for the fishes. The fishes can come and eat this particular food. So that's why this region where cold and warm current meet is called as, are very important for the fishing ground. So I hope this is in the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. So what you have to remember is the names of the currents. It is very simple, because you, from one side, you have the North America. In the North America, you have to remember Caribbean islands, Caribbean current, Florida, State of Florida, Florida currents, then Gulf Stream, right? Similarly, here when you come this side, you have Canary current. That's all that you have to remember. So like this, you have to remember based on the land masses that are there around. Right? Based on the landmass, you can remember what are the names of this current. Now coming to the Southern Atlantic Ocean, look at this. You will have a South Equatorial current. Now in between the South and the North, you have a current also, right? Now how come Equatorial current and the South Equatorial current go and hit any landmass? You can see it is coming and hitting the Southern South America here. When it hits any landmass, in opposite direction, a current will be generated because it's hitting a landmass, and that's called counter equatorial current. Okay. Now here you see South Equatorial current, and when it enters or when it hits the southern South American region, Brazil is there over here, so it is Brazilian current. From the down, there is Falkland current that is coming over here. Now you see Falkland current and the Brazil current together are mixing here, and that will cause a rich fishing grounds. And there is always one permanent ocean that flows, that is called west wind drift. Again, now this west wind drift, it is always moving in the lower latitudes, like in in Antarctic region. But here, when it comes in contact with South Africa, this is South Africa part over here. There is a Angula region. Based on this region, you have named it as Benguela region. So remember, here are only 4 currents. One is South Equatorial current that comes and hits Brazil, forms Brazil current. In between, down from below, you have 2 cold currents. One is the Falkland current, which is coming above. Another is the west wind drift, which is flowing in the Atlantic region. But when it reaches, or when it comes in touch with South Africa region, it becomes a Benguela current. Now here you can see another, circulation of water that is called gyre here. The names of the gyre are simple. The name of a gyre are depending on where they are present. If it is present in the Atlantic Ocean, Atlantic gyre. North Atlantic gyre, South Atlantic gyre. North Atlantic Sargasso Sea, South Atlantic Sargasso Sea. The Sargasso Sea is nothing but what? All the 4 sides divided by or covered with what? Water. So these are the 2 important ocean currents or ocean water circulation in Atlantic Ocean. Similarly, you have it for Pacific Ocean. This is Pacific Ocean, and there's only one. Basically, there are 2, but we only consider it as one in the Indian Ocean, right? So coming to Pacific Ocean. Now see the Pacific Ocean. As usual, you have a North Equatorial current. North and South Equatorial current are going to remain same in both the oceans, in all the 3 oceans. Okay. Now when it comes to this side, you have Kuroshio current, right? Kuroshio, here you have Kuroshian Islands, so that's why it's called Kuroshio current. And then you have Oyoshio current coming from the polar region. Now, where you have Oyoshio current and Kuroshio current coming and meeting together, that is fishing ground. Now, Kuroshio current, after that, it becomes what? North Pacific current or North Pacific drift, you can say. right? And then you have Alaska current that is coming from Alaska over here, and then you have California current. So here you can see another gyre that is being formed, and that is your North Pacific gyre and the Sargasso Sea over here. Similarly, when you come down over here, you see South Equatorial current, because that's in the south and southern part of the Pacific Ocean. When it comes to Australia, it is called East Australian current. You remember this west windward drift was there in your Atlantic Ocean also. I told you this west windward drift is a straight drift that is flowing towards Antarctica. So here it goes. After that, here it will come to Chile Peru region. So it goes as Peru current. So this is forming in another Sargasso Sea, another gyre. Now, in your prelims, they may ask you which important ocean currents form rich fishing grounds. So you need to know which of them are cold currents, which of them are warm currents. Now, warm currents and cold currents, warm currents depending on where they're originating. Cold currents usually originate in the polar regions. So just know at least the cold currents that are important. Very less cold currents are there, like you have west windward drift, Oasis current, and then Peru current, and here you have your California current. So only few of them are what cold. Remaining all of them are what hot currents only, warm currents only, you can say. So wherever these warm and hot currents meet, you need to know where warm and cold currents meet, because they are important for your rich fishing ground. These are important currents that are present in the Pacific Ocean. If I have to discuss about Indian Ocean, the southern part is at least quite common. You can see over here. This is west windward drift, and then you have Antarctica, Australia current here. And then after that, you have your South Equatorial current that is anyways there. Then you have Monzo-BQ current, because here in this region, you have Monzo-BQ, this thing. Then you have Agulhas current over here. So this is important only South Indian Ocean gyre and South Indian Ocean Sargasso Sea. Sargasso Sea is not present in your northern part. In the northern part, there are two. You can see here the direction of the southwest monsoon and northeast monsoon. It depends which region. If it is southwest, like during the monsoon season, southwest monsoon currents, you can actually ignore this part, ignore the North Indian part or North Indian Ocean part. Only the South Indian Ocean gyre and Sargasso Sea are formed. There is no Sargasso Sea and no equatorial north current also. And you don't have you have counter equatorial current, but not important, not at all highly, recommended also. You have to remember 5 guides, 5 guides, 5 Sargasso Seas, 5 circulations only, right? Here you can see in this very clearly. I think all of you are able to see this one here down. Just let me make it clear. Here you can see all the ones which are, blue in color. Here, this one, this current which is flowing over here. This is actually called as what? West windward drift, because it's more flowing in the west direction, so west wind drift. So this only comes up here, becomes a Falkland current, and Benguela current over here, and different currents over here. So this are the important cold currents. So by this diagram, you can easily make out which are the currents that are present across the world, right? So these currents are important for your prelims. Basically, they'll not ask you in your mains main exam to just draw it. Even if they ask you, I think it's very clear. You just draw the map and do it. It becomes easier for you. Draw only the South Africa, North America part, and only the South Atlantic region separately, North Atlantic region. Anyways, you will have these slides, so you can take the reference of these slides and draw it again and again. Over a period of time, you will be able to remember all of them clearly. Okay. Now, depending on the temperature, we have cold currents. Okay, cold currents bring the cold water. So here from the Falkland current, the cold water is going to the warmer regions, making that region cold. Similarly, warm water bring the warm water from the equatorial region to other parts, making the other parts warmer. Okay, so as usually observed on the eastern coast of the continent in the lower and the middle latitudes on both the hemisphere, right? Now, based on ocean, we have surface currents and deep water currents. On the surface, only 10% of the water is there. Below 400 meters, you will have 90% of the water moving, right? Effects of ocean current. So you need to understand, because of this cold ocean currents and warm ocean currents also are, climate is changing. right? The mixing of cold and water current help in replenishing the oxygen that help in fishing grounds, growth of planktons, and that is a primary food for fish population. The best fishing grounds in the world are mainly this where mixing of warm and cold currents happen, right? So these, I told you about the Sargasso Sea, and this is how it looks like, right? So this is all about your oceanography, right? In tomorrow's class, we will be studying your, one second, yeah. In tomorrow's class, we'll be studying your entire, what do you mean to say? Corals, and we'll start with, once I finish corals, because we are going to study about how atolls are formed, how fringing reefs are formed, how barrier reefs are formed, etc., and all of that. Once we study corals, the entire oceanography comes into picture, completes the entire oceanography. Now I have already completed the basics of oceanography. I will again tell you how to study oceanography in 1 hour. For the first 15 minutes, kindly only refer to what is continental shelf, continental slope, deep sea plain, what are the different major and minor features. Major features, mid-oceanic ridges. I think all of you know how mid-oceanic ridges are formed. That is, we have studied it in seafloor spreading theory. And then deep trenches, ocean deeps, they are also called ocean deeps or trenches. We know how trenches are formed. Trenches are formed when oceanic crust conversion happens or continental oceanic crust conversion happens, right? That is when one of the plate subducts below the other one, there is a subduction, and the place where subduction happens, there you find these trenches, right? The trenches, mid-oceanic ridges are important major features. Apart from this, we have studied about the submarine canyons, the sea mounts, the gyots, right, and the islands. Now, when sea mounts come on the surface of the water, it becomes a volcanic island. And if it is not coming on the surface of the earth, then it is called sea mount. If the sea mount have a flat surface, then they are called gyots. And whenever there is an opening of a river, or when a bigger river mouth opens into a ocean water or a sea water, it has a capacity to erode the continental slope and the shelf. And the erosion of the continental slope and the shelf will make a kind of canyon kind of material or canyon kind of landform that gets created, and that is called submarine canyons, right? These are different, what you mean to say, major and minor reliefs. So continental slope, the gradient is very less. Continental shelf, the gradient is very high. In the continental slope, there are fossils present, right? So these are certain, what you mean to say, points that you need to understand. Now, deep sea plain or abyssal plain is a plain that is there, right, where all your sand, silt, deposition basically happen. So this is basically the first part where you will understand the relief. Read all the points, understand all the points over here. Then come to ocean temperature. In the surface 200 meters, it is called photic zone. Why? Because sunlight enters. Below that, below 200 to 300 meters, there is no sunlight that enters, so it is a photic zone. So depending on the photic zone and the aphotic zone, what we have here is the temperature goes on reducing when you go deep in the ocean. That is the first 400 meters, the temperature is reducing, but very, very less. But after 400 to 1000 meters, what happens here is that the drastic change in the temperature. That is from 20 degrees to it is coming to 4 degrees, 3 degrees. This change, drastic change, is called thermocline, right? Similarly, after you study ocean temperature, you will study about ocean salinity. Now, ocean salinity depending on the surface water. Now, surface water ocean salinity depends on two things. One is if more sunlight is there, evaporation is more. So when evaporation is more, salinity is also more. If less sunlight is there, evaporation is less salinity. This is evaporation is directly proportional to salinity. That means more evaporation happens, more saline, less evaporation happens, less saline. But rainfall is ulta. If more rainfall, salinity is less. If less rainfall, salinity is more. This is precipitation and evaporation. Apart from precipitation and evaporation, when you go deep down the earth, deep down the ocean, the salinity also keeps on decreasing. Okay, that is in the first 200 or 400 meters, the salinity is different. When you go down, the salinity is different, and there is a drastic change in the salinity of the water, and that's called halocline, because it's a drastic change. So this is temperature and salinity. Study them together. After temperature, salinity, what we have discussed is tides. In tides, only two things. Why tides are caused? Tides are caused because of the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun. If the moon, earth, and the sun are in the straight line, then it is called the spring tide. If the moon and the moon and the sun are at right angles to each other with respect to earth, then it is neap tide. So the average days for a spring tide and a neap tide to happen is 7 days. And the spring tide happens on full moon and a new moon day, like Amavasya and Purnima that you have, right? So this is a little bit about tides. After the tides, what you have studied is ocean currents. We have to understand that there are 5 important ocean parts, 3 important ocean basically. One is Pacific. In Pacific, you have 2. In Atlantic, you have 2. In Indian Ocean, you have 1 important, ocean currents. You have to remember all the 5 ocean currents, which are, circular in nature, which are the important currents that are flowing, and which are the important fishing grounds, right? So this is a little bit about ocean currents. So if you just do this much for oceanography is more than enough. See, I told you